Welcome back to my workshop. Now today's video is going to be a job that I've been trying to do for quite a long time, and what I want to do is make a sled for my bandsaw. Okay, now for those of you that don't know, let me demonstrate what a sled is for. Now I've got one on my table saw, which is under here. I'll pull that out and quickly show you what it is. Okay, so on my table saw, sometimes I want to cut small pieces like this, for example. Now the options I've got are either set the fence up, which is a bit of a pain sometimes, and it's all a lot of setting up, and it's not always the best thing to do. Now if I wanted to make repeated small cuts that are all exactly the same, I could use one of these, which is a mitre, but they do tend to have a little bit of slop, and not always the best thing for doing for a safety point of view. I'm not a big fan of these. They do work, but I'm not a big fan. So a couple of years ago, as a very temporary measure, I made one of these, which is a table saw sled. Now it's literally a piece of wood, a couple of wood battens front and back, and what it does, it gives you a constant cut. Okay, so then you can put your piece against this back fence, push it through the cut and make a simple cut. Now this is, I think it's a bit more safe than using a normal mitre. I like these, and what I wanted to do was make one for my bandsaw. So just as a quick demo on how this thing works, I've got a piece of material here that I want to cut, but I want to cut it square, but I don't want to be mucking about setting too much stuff up. So I just drop my sled into the runners. So nice and safe, nice and square, and nice and repeatable. You can easily put a stop on here so you can cut multiple pieces all exactly the same length. Right, I want one of these for my bandsaw. Right, so as usual, I'm going to use some reclaimed material. Always best because it's always nice and cheap. Now what I've got is, first of all, a normal piece of construction timber, which is about 45mm by about 20mm, very rough, and it's not exactly straight, so I'm going to have to run this through the planer to get it square. I've got a batten of wood here, which is hardwood, which I've cut off of a door. Now you'll see me making this in an upcoming video where I do a one-handed challenge, so you'll have to stay tuned to watch that. And also the final piece, I've got a piece of board here. Looks like a very expensive piece of material, but it's actually MDF, just laminated with a very thin veneer of, it looks like it's pretend oak. Okay, so I'm going to use that because it's quite flat and quite stable. Right, I'm going to drag my bandsaw out so I can actually work on it. Okay, so I've dragged my bandsaw out now. Now the first thing I'm going to do is make some runners. Now obviously in the table here, you can see, luckily I've got a groove either side of the blade. Now you could use this type of idea on the smaller bandsaws that don't have these, or they only have one. You could actually run the battens along the edge, so you could adapt it for smaller bandsaws. On this one, I need to have a batten in each of these grooves. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to plane this down so it fits just snugly in there without too much slop. So cut this to length to make sure it's the right size. So I'm going to get on with that now. Okay, so I've got my two battens cut. Now obviously not everyone's got a planer thicknesser, but you can create these by cutting the battens of wood as close as you can with anything, even a hand plane, or use your bandsaw to cut them as small as possible, and then you can finish them with sandpaper or a small hand plane. So you don't need a planer thicknesser. Right, so now I've got my two battens. Now these run quite smoothly. I will be waxing these afterwards so they do run smoothly. Right, so next stage now is I need to mount my board. Now at the moment my board is slightly longer than my table. I'm going to leave it like that in a moment, and I'll show you why in a moment. But obviously I need to set this up on the table. So at the moment, the blade is in the way. So for ease of use and setup, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my blade out quickly. So then I've got a table with no interruptions. So now I've got my blade off. Now these runners, although they fit nicely this way, they're still just slightly too high. Okay, now what I don't want is I don't want my board to sit on top of those because it might sag in the middle. Okay, so what I need to do, I need to plane these down so they're flush with the top, but slightly shorter. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a couple of little teeny tiny washers like this, insert those into the groove, okay, at either end. So then when I put my batten on, okay, it sits on those. So once it's finished and I take the washers out, this is slightly short of the bottom of the hole. Okay, I'll plane these off. Again, you could do this with a hand plane, but I'm going to use my electric planer. Okay, I'll be back to you in a second. Okay, so I've still got my little teeny tiny washers in. Both my battens are now planed down to the right thickness. So these are now flush with the top. Now, I'm going to use some CA glue, which is super glue. Just a couple of little dabs on the battens. You'll see why in a moment. Now obviously this is not going to be the final fixing. This is just to hold it in place temporarily. Okay, so I've got super glue on both of those. Now, take my base. Which way up am I going to have it? I think I'll have it this way. Okay, and then put it square on the table. So it's sitting on the battens and it's squared to the table as much as possible. It doesn't have to be super square at the moment. So what we have here is my table sitting on my batten, which is on top of the washers. Okay, for both of them. Okay, just leave that a couple of seconds to set, then we'll move on to the next stage. Okay, so the super glue has done its thing. I've just pulled this off the table, so now both my runners are fitted. Obviously these are a bit long, I'll cut them down maybe later. Now all I want to do is bang a couple of holes, stick some screws in the runners, so from this side into the board. Okay, so got my screws in here now, all countersunk so they don't stick out the bottom. So now in theory they should fit on here, which it does, and it should slide, which it does. Right, next. So now my fence, back fence. Now I want this on here, but I don't want it right at the very back because otherwise when we cut into it, it's just going to cut it into two pieces of wood, which is no good. So I'm going to come in from the edge, probably about 50 mil. Obviously not critical at the moment. Let's draw a quick line along there. Okay, now what we're going to do is put one screw in one end and leave the other end to move around. Okay, so I'll quickly drill a hole, countersink it and put a screw in just this end. Okay, so I've quickly drilled a hole, countersunk it, put one screw in this end so this end can still move. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll align it in a little while and then we'll put another screw in there. But what I need to do next is put the blade back in. Right, okay, so the blade's back in the bandsaw now. I've got this end clamped with a clamp so it's basically parallel along the back. Okay, I've got my one screw in this side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the grooves. I'm going to cut along until the blade just touches the back fence. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to quickly square this back fence up. Now I've just got a small piece of wood which has got at least one flat side on it. Now what I'm going to do is, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to put the back fence completely wonky. Okay, so I've got it clamped. I know this is wonky. Okay, let's show you from a different angle. Okay, you can see that that's not straight. Okay, so when I do a cut, the cut it makes will be at an angle. So let's quickly do that. Okay, so I've cut that. Now if we check it, look, it's horrendous. Okay, and the idea is, what I want to do is adjust the back fence so that that little gap there is no longer. Okay, now I've got a guideline which I used initially, which was about 50 millimeters. So what I do is I'll quickly clamp that in place. I've used a smaller clamp so I can get to the screw hole I've made. Check it. No, it's still wonky. So we've got to adjust this a little bit. No, it's still wonky. Better. Okay. Right. So now what I have to do is I have to put a screw in from the bottom. Okay, once you're happy that that's square and it's cutting the wood square, you can also check it with a known good square, which I'm using this one. Literally up against the fence, up against the blade, push it backwards and forwards to make sure there's no drift. Okay, once the clamps are in place, stick a screw in the bottom. Okay, once you've got a screw in there, clamp off, then check it again to make sure it's still square. Lovely. Okay, right, then take it off and put in some more screws along the back of the batten. Make sure you don't put one where the blade goes. Right, so now that's the basic thing done. Now obviously we don't need these runners anymore on the ends overhanging, or this overhanging this end. So we'll quickly chop them off on the bandsaw. Sounds like I need a new blade on there. Right, so that's the basic construction done. I'm just going to quickly give it a bit of a sand down to get rid of some of the sharp edges. Then I'm going to stick a little bit of wax on the runners just to make life nice and easy. So let me quickly do that and then that'll be finished. Right, so that's about it. As you can see, it's now easier to cut consistent sizes very quickly. The one thing I added, obviously from the wax on the base, on the runners, also added this, which is just a little stop block. Now this is literally just a couple of pieces of hardwood stuck together, well, screwed together very badly, and the knob is actually off the handle off of a lawnmower. Okay, just into a little insert in there. Okay, so that literally just comes through and holds onto the fence. Okay, right, well, I hope you've enjoyed this little build. It didn't take long to make. Obviously it took longer because I had to film it, but this, although it's only temporary, it's probably going to last me for about 5 or 6 years. So, hope you enjoyed that. Join me for the next video. Hopefully the next video will be interesting. And I'll see you later. Bye. Literally, better turn it on first. My other little batten of wood, which I've just got a splinter from. Ow. Ow. Ow.